This film will feature actual events and operations which took place in World War II during the winter of 1942 and 1943 through spring of 1945. A single 8mm movie camera was employed. There are no copied strips. The specialized training of the following two outstanding yet different Army divisions required all volunteer troops. The 10th Mountain Division and the 101st Airborne Division will be featured in this film. The 10th Mountain Division was stationed at Camp Hale, Colorado, near Tennessee Pass, with the elevation 10,424 feet, and near Mount Elbert, the highest peak in the United States Rocky Mountains, at 14,433 feet. Personnel reporting for duty and training with the 10th Mountain were soon to feel the effects of the rarefied air and its consequences at this altitude. Training was difficult and rough at times. The weather was not too cooperative during some overnight bivouac exercises. But once each training phase was completed, everyone thought it was needed and well worth the effort. Most technical training was carried out at camp. Tactical training, however, required large mountainous areas near timberline. Camp Hale was surrounded with such ideal training areas. Ranges were secured for live ammunition training for the 81mm mortars and the machine gun firing as well. The mortar impact area can be observed about 700 yards up the ridge. Light machine gun crew, however, was doing a dry run exercise at this time. Mountaineer troopers about to tackle rough terrain climbing with no special equipment needed at this time. Picturesque trees and rock formations in combination at times survived the elements. Not a proper way to evacuate a mountain tent. Footwear should exit first, in this case ski boots. Entering, however, footwear comes in last. Clean off all snow and ice, it's important. Attaching sealskins, mohair really, to skis for an uphill climb made sense under certain snow conditions, what troopers are doing. Ski bindings in use then served us well. They allowed for heel tension adjustments for level, uphill, and downhill skiing. Ski boots, as issued, were adequate, but should have contained a good warm lining. The current recreational alpine and Nordic sophisticated equipment would not have served the requirements needed in our equipment at the time. Yes, we had snowshoeing, quite a revelation for some die-hard ski troopers. Some saddle horses were maintained, if only to help round up the very wise and crafty mules, pack mules, at times set free in order to exercise. Good friends, Lieutenant Hawkins, Lieutenant Kirshner, and Lieutenant Ed Richardson. The San Bernard and his frisky friend were from a contingent of pets around camp. Our well-trained Siberian Huskies, however, enjoyed work pulling sleds rather than play. Must be Saturday or perhaps Sunday. We have hiked up Eagle Creek Pass, and now with a quick break, we'll proceed to climb the snowfields of Mount Hohensilver to the summit. Certainly strategy and high-level planning must be discussed in this climb. From this point, the mountain top is visible at last. way of cooling off during breaks in this long and interesting climb. Getting closer to the mountain summit, note the very large cornice or snow shelf. Note also the steep incline. Certainly makes for interesting skiing. I will try to point out the same cornice from a greater distance later in the film. Size of the snowfield will be apparent. The summit, just plain creek water, honest. What beautiful scenery all around. A couple of short runs from the top just to loosen up. A more stable, wider parallel form of skiing became force of habit from skiing with a 60-pound rucksack on your back and a rifle. Skiing down to the snowfields is exhilarating in itself. Speed is difficult to gauge. Snow is all you see at times. Just what it's all about, and closer to heaven too. Skiing down from these heights was always delayed somehow in order to enjoy the panoramic view of the Rocky Mountains. Our famous Cooper Hill off the road to Leadville and sporting a world-class T-bar toe. Civilian guests were well-known Western competitive skiers. The corkscrew trail off the top of Cooper, a series of moguls on a straight trail. Nevertheless, complete each turn or land up in the woods. I believe this trooper was Lieutenant Gray, with Homestake Mountain in the background. High and mighty Homestake Peak reminded me of Tuckham's Ravine back east in Mount Washington, New Hampshire. Only difference, Tuckham's head wall is concave as inside a bowl, and Homestake is convex. Both, however, have very steep inclines. Homestake Peak's on the right. Note the railroad, more on it shortly. Division Artillery triggered a planned avalanche with a pack howitzer fire at Homestake, and tons of snow lifted the ice off a small lake in its path. One of the highest railways in the United States climbs through Tennessee Pass, requiring multi-engine power. Warner Brothers movie makers produced a movie at Camp Hale in 1943 in progress here. A short view of Camp Hale looking southwest. Lest we forget, the overnight practice bivouac conducted on rifle range, with temperatures reaching 40 below zero and within sight of warm barracks and sunlit mountaintops. While skiing Cooper Hill, you will note some ski instructors wearing white armbands will at times carry a pack to adjust for their style of skiing. Makes a difference if you carry 60 pounds and a rifle on your back while skiing. This life on skis and climbing cannot last forever, and believe me, it did not. Our own B Hill rope tow, a fast and easy way to get up there, Popular area, shorter lines, good skiing. Lieutenant Johnson, Company Commander, Company H 87th. Snowshoes were invented in this continent, really, by Canadian pioneer trappers and adventurers. Snowshoeing the easy way, but on suitable terrain. It can, however, progress to a rough and tumble fight on steep inclines. The longer, narrower, turned-up tip of the Yukon trapper-style snowshoe was an ideal choice for the weapons company. Cooper. One must do his own thing on infrequent 10-minute breaks, all depending on the quantity of adrenaline available. So much energy to expend. You are all invited to give some of these exercises a try. How many of you troopers remember carrying a spare aluminum ski tip inside your rucksack? Skis were made out of wood. Yes, they did break tips off. Very embarrassing. Great training areas. There were lots of them. Some popular, others best forgotten if once caught there under blizzard conditions and plummeting temperatures. Small unit maneuver and break areas. Everyone became quite familiar with them. With the location, the granite wall up above there is a great place to stop and have a lunch. All were not proficient skiers when they joined the troopers. However, by the time they got through training, they were skiers. Lieutenant Johnson again. Lieutenant Byer, a fine trooper, was a very good friend of mine. How to devour an apple at 11,000-foot altitude. While breaking trail, I warn those skiers to close up or get left behind. As pointed out earlier in the film, note the same cornice at the very top of the snowfield at Mount Silva. Well-trained and well-equipped ski troopers on the 30-mile overnight hike and bivouac. There will be tall tales to recount when they return, certainly if one of our frequent blizzards should visit them. In the background, Mount Sugarloaf. May of 1943, the 10th Mountain Division was directed to furnish one regiment for a mission yet undisclosed. The 87th Mountain Infantry at Camp Hale, Colorado, 11 June 1943, with destination Fort Ord, California. There to conduct amphibious training along the California coast, two troop ships, two LCP landing craft personnel via Jacob's ladder stressed. A Jacob's ladder is a heavy rope net. Training completed, the 87th boarded troop transports with destination the Aleutian Islands off Alaska at the island of Adak to join forces with the 9th Amphibious Task Force then being organized in mid-July 1943. Ceremony being conducted on board our transport now in Adak Harbor, and 3 days prior to our planned task force attack mission was for Navy personnel decorated for action in the attack on the island of Attu in May of 1943. Final destination and target for the 9th Task Force to be the Japanese-held island of Kiska, 250 miles west of Adak. The island was reportedly held by 11,000 Japanese troops. Major General Charles H. Corlett, U.S. Army, is in charge of landing 34,000 combat and support troops on the island of Kiska. Admiral Rockwell to command fleet of 100 troop and combat ships for the operation. Troops and units involved for the planned attack on Kiska are the Canadian Special Forces, the Canadian 13th Brigade Group, the 87th Mountain Infantry trained in mountain warfare, units of the 7th Infantry Division with battle experience on the island of Attu, which included the 17th Infantry, the 53rd Infantry, and the 184th Infantry. Troopers observing ceremony are from the 87th Mountain Infantry. A fast PT boat rigged as an LCP attempted fake landing on Kiska in order to draw enemy fire, but received negative results. The following actions are not reenactments, but actual invasion of Kiska. Troopers in the LCP are members of the 87th Mountain in Adak Harbor getting final run-through before the invasion of Kiska. D-Day, 15 August, at dawn, the attack is on. All 3 battalions and support elements, 87th Mountain Regiment, spearhead the assault on Kiska's northern shore, on the Bering Sea, southern sector. First wave of troopers have landed. LCPs returning for next wave. Canadian Special Troops land on the southern shore. All troopers crossed a low apron of barbed wire recently installed just off the beach. 87 troopers examining automatic weapons of varied calibers, which were trained on our landing beach. Beach, did I say? Helmet-sized rocks, really. No resistance encountered, no shots fired, and weather was closing in on us. Not expecting air cover, as none had been provided for, due to the predicted conditions. These Eagles can bore holes through solid clouds formations with their P-38 twin-engine, twin-fuselage fighter planes. Bet they all volunteered for this. The Aleutian Islands are reputed to have the toughest flying weather in the world and poorest airstrips. Events leading up to the assault are as follows. 10 to 14 August, the 11th Air Force from Adak bombed Kiska Harbor and all known targets. 13 August, the entire task force left from the island of Adak for Kiska. 15 August, as stated, Invasion Day of Kiska. All ridges and other high ground had to be reconnoitered and secured. No enemy in sight. Lieutenant Reardon, I could read his thoughts. What a letdown. What do you suppose they went to? Canadian Special Forces troops, whom I conversed with, were amazed at the agility and conditions of our mountain troops. They too were special troops. Day 3 and 4 came and went. Nothing very exciting was happening. Lacking, however, was the expected contact with other involved units in the operation. Tactical situations, whether in training or wartime, require control points between friendly units. Our supplies had caught up with us, and hot rations were making an appearance. Our food service troopers were to be commended on their efforts to feed the troops. Our steel helmets were laid aside finally, but never far out of reach. A giant 6-pyramidal mess tent was engineered later, revetment and all, only to end up in near Salmon Lagoon, falling an Aleutian willy-waw wind, which paid us a visit one night. Troopers were cautioned to be aware of booby traps. Seems the Japanese had ample time to set them up before their departure. There were some casualties to our troops, unfortunately. Trooper looking down Kiska Harbor. Typical Aleutian terrain, tundra, volcanic ash, and rocks and mud. Trooper, Japanese kitchen and food holding area, stacks of rice and what looked like barley. Cans of crab meat were found. Our troops were cautioned to, however, the contents could contain ground glass. Sod-covered buildings, perhaps as a mess hall, served as a mess hall. A mess it was. A distance of 150 yards or so from our bivouac area and short distance from shore, an American pilot's grave located in filled shell crater with a plain wooden cross and 24-inch tall, a small shrine-like wooden plaque with inscriptions painted in English, sleeping here a brave American hero who lost youth and happiness for his motherland, signed Nippon Army. A touching sight indeed. It was dated July the 25th. Our T-15 Weasels, so well liked and so handy in snow at Camp Hale, proved to be of no use on volcanic ash and damp tundra, much less on rocks and mud. The island of Kiska is situated generally running northeast to southwest and is approximately 25 miles in length and 4 to 5 miles in width, with Kiska volcano, elevation 4,004 feet, located on the northern shore end of the island. Crevices make the volcano dangerous to climb for an amateur. Tundra can hide pitfalls. After much training and preparation, plus being keyed up for the operation, some troopers are actually disappointed. What happened? Japanese hospital sodded roof to effect camouflage from aerial observation. Underground caches of Japanese guns and ammunition needed evacuating. Japanese had underground quarters covered with straw-like mats. These quarters were evidently used frequently as shelter from the weather and from troops strafing American planes. One of several Japanese planes shot down. Fighter planes such as you have observed with twin engines and twin fuselage are P-38s flying out of the island Adak and or Amchitka, about 60 miles southeast of Kiska. Not knowing the language, I am not certain if indeed that was a Japanese grave marker. All downed planes were of amphibious type and could have been strafed while in the water or otherwise shot down. Some appear to have been strafed once they were down and used as targets. They were pretty well shot up. Colonel Ross Wilson, 1st Battalion Commander, had wisely selected for our permanent bivouac area level ground just high enough for good drainage and situated between Kiska Harbor and Salmon Lagoon. Sea-run salmon were caught in this small body of water. Rumored that all the sake Japanese could not carry away in their hasty evacuation 2 weeks prior to our attack was dumped in this lagoon. Some will recall Sergeant Randolph, just seen, Lieutenant Jim Church, a fine officer, Sergeant Randolph, always clean and progressive. Sergeant Scott got with a fresh salmon caught in nearby lagoon. Fine trooper and fisherman. Kiska Harbor, bombed and shelled to mere rubble, quickly emerged into bustling harbor, even to contain a small post exchange, a haven for smokers but low to the person who likes candy. All they had available was lies, lemon balls, sour ones at that. Ships unloading in Kiska Harbor. Situated due west from the harbor, 2 miles or so hidden in a small cove, a 2-man submarine repair service was based. 3 such submarines were in dry dock, and all had been disabled with heavy charges detonated from within. Sunset in the Aleutians, the end of our mission and stay here, just short of 4 months in an Aleutian island. Surely the Navy or the Army or both had forgotten us. Not really a fitting assignment for specialized troops. The 87th Infantry returned to the continental United States 9 December 1943 and was temporarily stationed at Camp Carson, Colorado, soon to rejoin the 10th Mountain Division at Camp Hale. At Camp Carson, assignment orders were received affecting myself and Lieutenant Hans Kirchner and one other trooper to report and be assigned to Army Combat Military Intelligence School at Fort Ritchie, Maryland. Months later, with course completed, an Allied Forward Intelligence course completed in London, England, request was submitted and approved to be attached to the headquarters, 101st Airborne Division, G2 section, then in England. Also completed the parachute jumps course with the 501st Parachute Regiment. 101st Airborne Division completed its Normandy invasion and returned to England to re-equip, resupply, and await its next mission. It was not long in coming. The 501st Parachute Regiment conducted a parachute jumping school, while the division conducted a combat glider course for the troopers of the 327th Glider Regiment and all other assigned glider troopers. Ready yourself for a record brief course in parachute jumping. First, be in excellent physical condition. Partial C-47 plane fuselage is elevated 5 feet off the ground. No door. Time and again, the individual jumps out, right leg first, and rolls forward when hitting the ground. Next, a thorough course in parachute packing. Pack your own chute, sign the chute card to that effect. Rig up with main chute and a spare chest chute. Check all fasteners. Climb aboard with 19 other troopers. Plane flies over drop zone. On command, hook up to static line. Check front troopers hook up and equipment. Small red light is an alert. Green light, you jump out. Right leg first again. Wait for opening shock. Check canopy to assure it's entirely open. Guide short lines to land forward. Hit the ground going forward. Roll and stop and collapse chute. Simple as that. Next mission of the battle-tested 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne had been selected by General Matthew B. Ridgway, commanding General 18th Airborne Corps, to join forces with British 1st Airborne Division and Polish Parachute Brigade, to be known as the 1st Allied Airborne Army for this mission. Sunday, 17 September 1944, at 1300 hours, the largest force of transport aircraft ever assembled lifted off 22 airfields west and north of London, England, with 1,534 troop carrier aircrafts, mostly American C-47 Dakotas, and 491 gliders of mixed American CG-4As and British Horsa gliders. 1,000 Allied fighter support planes provided escort. Lieutenant Loeffler and Lieutenant Kipnis. Loeffler, IPW, Lieutenant Kipnis, order of battle. A northern route over the North Sea was to be followed in transporting the British 1st Airborne Division and the 82nd Airborne Division. With all paratroopers and glider troopers of both divisions, the Polish Brigade, Parachute Brigade, was to follow the same route at D+2. You're witnessing the 501st Airborne dropping in Holland. The southern route over the North Sea was to be followed by the 101st Airborne Division, paratroopers and glider troopers. The city of Antwerp was situated between northern and southern routes at some 30 miles from either route. The invasion of Holland was on, code name Market Garden. In all, over 35,000 troops were involved in the Allied invasion of Holland. This was a British-commanded operation. You're witnessing some C-47s that were downed. Most troopers made it okay. The mission required flying some 100 miles over enemy territory and at about 1,000-foot altitude. All units involved were to drop their paratroopers and land their glider troopers 50 miles behind the lines in order to accomplish their mission. On the 1st Airborne Division, with 11,800 men, was to use pre-designated DZs and LZs assigned by General Maxwell D. Taylor and his general staff. German prisoners captured in our drop and landing zones first few hours after we landed are currently being interrogated. The mission of the 101st Airborne was as follows. 501st Parachute Regiment dropped south of town in Beckel, seized town and all roads and railroad bridges. 502 Parachute Regiment dropped north of town of Zorn, seized the town of Osanodon Road and Donnell River Bridge. Most Dutch young people can speak 3 languages fluently, read and write it as well. The 506 Parachute Regiment seized the town of Zorn, attacked south, seized the bridge over Wilhelmina Canal, and seized the city of Eindhoven. Population 100,000. The 327th Glider Regiment is to arrive in 2 waves, one later on D-Day and the remainder D+1, to land in LZs and DZs with division artillery and light vehicles. Securing the village of Zorn, crossing over the Nijmegen Road Bridge, over the Wall River going north. D+3, British 30 Corps Advanced Light Armor and Engineer Supply Vehicles finally got to Nijmegen. 2 days late. They still have to reach Arnhem, a few miles north of Nijmegen. Nijmegen, some of the city destroyed by the Germans in initial capture. Master Sergeant Bradley, photo intelligence personnel visiting temporary grave site of varied nationalities, Polish, German, others. Notice a knocked out church steeple. They make too good an observation post for the enemy. Hell's Highway from Nijmegen to Eindhoven, attacked and mined at night. Ambulance filled with armed German combat troops trying to make break for it, and they failed. 88mm anti-aircraft, anti-tank, anti-anything artillery disabled with gravel stuck in the barrels and fired. These same weapons were firing at us a few hours ago. Zorn Road Bridge, knocked out by the Germans right in our faces. D+3, more prisoners being guarded by Dutch civilian resistance groups who identified themselves with orange armbands. To Dutch people meant freedom. Civilians still wore wooden shoes due to muddy conditions at times. more German prisoners being guarded by resistance groups. You notice the orange band on their arms. Any vehicle will do. German prisoners in Eindhoven, near the Phillips factory, I believe. Who said we took no prisoners? The devils in baggy pants. That's erroneous. Fearless Lincoln Stevenson, an aerial photo team leader and prisoner interrogator. Yours truly, that Thompson has to be kept clean. A daylight counterattack from across the Wilhelmina Canal. 6 German tanks and some infantry intent on knocking out the CP and Bailey Bridge nearby. They failed. Camouflage nylon parachutes make great tents. So I have to dig that foxhole. It's important. We're just outside our temporary division command post, a small castle near the town of Eckel. Lieutenant Sherrill making a great stew. Some customers are very impressed. No castle for General Maxwell Taylor, however. 101st Airborne Division commander always preferred sleeping outside in a tent. Those are Canadian troops to sea marching along the Maas River dike. This is a 3/4-ton laboratory truck for photo interpreters. The Canadians were arriving to relieve some of our troops. The Germans later blew the dike, about a week later we understood, and inundated the whole area between the wall and the Maas River dikes. Finally back to Hell's Highway, which had been mined repeatedly, shelled and strafed, was still a way back to our base camp in Montmelon, France. After 72 days online, we arrived in Reims late November 1944 for rest and refitting. Like the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne Division also achieved its objectives by capturing a bridge at Nijmegen and also seizing the city of Nijmegen. Sunday night, 17 December 1944, General McAuliffe, Rest Camp Commander at Montmelon in France, notified the General Staff there had been a breakthrough in the Ardennes, and 18th Airborne Corps had ordered the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne Divisions to leave for the town of Obermont, Belgium, in the morning. So much for the rest area, just outside of Reims, France, and Champagne, capital of the world yet. 10,000 Screaming Eagles troopers were transported by truck transport, quarter-ton jeeps, 2.5-ton trucks, towards our new mission, 125 miles to the northeast. En route, new orders were received from 1st Army headquarters, sending the 101st Airborne to a more critical breakthrough in the vicinity of the town of Bastogne, Belgium. Population 3,700, but a hub road network for Belgium, France, Luxembourg, and currently headquarters for the 8th U.S. Army Corps, whose 106 and 28 divisions had been overrun by the German army in the breakthrough. 8th Corps headquarters was moving out. The Germans had occupied Bastogne for 4 years prior to the American Army takeover. Now, Thursday, 21 December, Bastogne is being defended by the 101st Airborne Division, Combat Command B of the 10th Armored, and the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion. All units had low supplies of ammunition. In all, we had a total of 18,000 troops fighting back 45,000 Germans. A massive German assault on Bastogne was on, spearheaded by the 2 Panzer divisions, the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, and the Panzer Lehr Division of the 47th Panzer Corps, 5th Panzer Army. As you witnessed, we received some supplies by air drop initially. It is now 23 December, good flying weather, and our first massive resupply of air by air begins with white chutes, medical supplies, red chutes, ammunition, green chutes, food, quartermaster supplies, and so forth, yellow chutes, gasoline, oil, etc. Medical supplies were in dire need, as our field hospital had been overrun by the Germans early on. Ammunition for the 321 and 907 Glider Field Artillery and 377 Parachute Field Artillery battalions placed these units back in full support positions again. 24 December, over 100 tons of supplies were dropped and glidered in. All this activity was within sight of the Germans. A view of the Bastogne Hospital is coming up. From inside the perimeter. On pickup duty, our troopers were out in the open fields. Some artillery was encountered. Note the very low altitude of the hundreds of parachute supply planes. This served 2 purposes. Pinpoint dropping of supplies. The planes are able to evade some heavy anti-aircraft artillery, which delivers flight better at higher altitudes. Remember, we are completely encircled. Planes are forced through a veritable wall of anti-aircraft flak on the way into the supply drop zones, and again on the way back. A tight turn around after the drop avoids going through more encounters. Look closely and pick out ongoing fighter planes. Dogfights are being carried out by our escort planes and German fighters. The Bastogne Hospital received German shelling on one occasion. Several one-story French and Belgian barracks were within the compound. We actually had to dig foxholes inside these buildings in order to have shelter and get below ground level. The barracks we had selected had the roof blown off. A large dominating church was situated on the northern side of the compound, and a cemetery close to the compound entrance. Division CP adjoined the church, contained an underground hallway with adjoining rooms, served as quarters, war room, and command post. A great amount of courage was exhibited by our glider pilots who were towed over a fierce battle zone through a veritable wall of anti-aircraft flak, and upon release, land their gliders loaded with personnel and supplies wherever possible. C-47 supply planes were shot down. At such a low altitude, most made it belly down. Most planes' crews rode the disabled plane to the ground, too low for parachuting in. Ring of Fire, not the musical score, but a unique night bombing method. A Ju-88 night fighter plane would circle the compound area containing the division's CP and the brick barracks. The entire division headquarters area targeted, dropping burning flares as it circled. Several other Ju-88 planes, night fighters, low-level, bombed within the circle of flares. Young girls' Catholic orphanage within the adjoining church compound a cemetery somewhere in Belgium, temporary U.S. cemetery. This Tuesday, 26 December, Reserve Combat Command, commanded by Lieutenant Creighton W. Abrams of the 4th Armored Division, broke through southwest of Bastogne and made contact with the elements of the 101st Airborne Division in that sector on the perimeter. General McAuliffe greeted Captain William H. Dwight and Lieutenant Charles Bulge, tank commanders, at the breakthrough. The war was not over, but the 101st Airborne Division had accomplished its defense of Bastogne. We then returned to our base camp in Montmelon, France, to await our next mission.